Deadpool, the merc with the mouth, the guy that makes tons of references, the guy that is the master at fourth wall breaking, the guy that can make even Spider-Man really confused, the guy that's a master predictability, the guy that has one of the best video games, period. Trust me, watch playthroughs of the video game, like, especially the ones by Markiplier. Those are just gold. And also a great comic book series, which has lots of interesting pokes of interesting types of media, and it pokes fun at comic book, characters, and it has lots of interesting events to, basically, put it forth. I'm sorry if I seem, kind of slow. It's just that this movie is just... It's just that since this is unscripted and since this movie is just going everywhere, I feel like I just need some time to process this, but I'm just going to go really, get to the point on this. That Deadpool the movie is by far one of the most overhyped movies I've seen in a long time. Lots of people will say, oh, Star Wars The Force Awakens was more hyped, but I honestly don't think so, because if you avoid spoilers, and if you don't look at certain videos or reviews, or hell, even if you do look at a few positive reviews, it won't ruin your expectations of the movie. Like, the movie was very, very brilliantly crafted, and one of the things that it did right is the fact that, it didn't show Luke until the end. I'm sorry if that was a spoiler, but yeah, whatever. So basically, with the reviews and all of that, it doesn't really ruin the movie too much unless you're a big nerd that wants everything in the movie. And it was overall a nice movie. And before anyone's going crazy, I'm not going to compare this movie to Star Wars The Force Awakens, because that's like comparing pears to bananas. They're like nothing and nothing alike. And you must be wondering, well, why is Deadpool a banana? Because the sex jokes are just off the wall, pretty much. But yeah, pretty much everyone and their mothers on YouTube are talking about how this movie is the best thing ever, and how I should go see it, and how it's cool, and how, well, comic book fans will love it, but casual fans will love it too, and because of that, I had some pretty high expectations for it. Although I have not read the comics, so there may be a few ways or things that I may not have enjoyed from it, and I will admit that. However, like I mentioned previously in the video, I did watch the video game, and I absolutely adored it. I love the way his character worked, and I found the relationships in relation to the plot very interesting. But with this, I honestly feel like that there was barely any plot to this, to be honest. Like, I guess the best way I can describe it is shit happens the movie. And if you're getting offended by that one little vulgar remark, then try seeing out the entire movie, because that's all the movie really is, vulgar remarks. And the problem with this is not so much the fact that it's vulgar, but the fact that literally every joke is the most vulgar thing you could imagine. It's like if someone took a compilation of the YouTube comments and kept scrolling down and made it into a movie. That's how vulgar the jokes are. And not only is it the nature of the jokes, but the fact that the jokes keep going at you every single second. There's just no time to breathe. And another problem was the fact that so many of the jokes are just mind-numbingly immature that it, honest to God, feels like that a 13-year-old wrote this. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised, because a lot of, people that are around that age like Deadpool. But just because there are teenagers that are very immature that likes Deadpool doesn't mean you have to cater to that. And I'm full aware that Deadpool's insane and that he's not exactly a mature character. However, the fact that Deadpool is insane and can go crazy is the main appeal for his character to me, because I honestly feel like that Deadpool in a way is like a ticking time bomb, and where he may act like, all funny and snarky, but that's more of a cover-up to show his true intentions and his true hurts, to the point in where when that cover-up is gone, he will literally turn to a psychopath. And I think the best example would be Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe. That, I think, is a very also well-done example of Deadpool's insanity. But going back to the point that besides the sex jokes, I feel like that the biggest problem with the movie is that I feel like that a lot of it was done less because of the story, but because of the fans wanting it to be in there, and because of the fact that it was rated R. It was like that. I can almost imagine the crew, like, crossing their fingers what the rating would be, and then suddenly, boom, it's rated R. They're like, oh my god, we have to crack as much sex jokes and about as much as this to prove that it's deserving of rated R. And it's just one of those things where just because it's rated R doesn't mean that you have to prove that it's rated R. And I know that may seem very strange talking about it in that sense of the word, but literally throughout the entire time, I feel like nothing of substance was being put in the story. I just felt like that they were trying way too hard to be edgy and prove that they were rated R. Just like how Sonic the Hedgehog made Shadow the Hedgehog trying to prove that they're edgy and that they can be rated PG-13. Yes, that actually happened. Shadow had guns and he was on a motorcycle. And that's how I felt like. And I honestly feel like that as many people that it will offend, I honestly feel like that once the hype goes down, this movie might be like Shadow the Hedgehog. It might be as a movie that's laughed at, not because it's legitimately funny, but because it's trying way too hard to be edgy. Now, is this movie bad? Well, while some people may think that it's bad, I honestly don't really think it's that bad. I mean, compared to Fantastic Four, this movie is like Citizen Kane worthy. But I just think the movie's just mediocre. It wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible either. But also sorry, this movie, it just took so much out of me. But to get to the actual good side of the movie, one thing that I do like is Ryan Reynolds. Now, the guy is very, very charismatic, and he was in lots of funny roles before, and you could just tell that he has a passion for the character, and he has a passion for his lines, and he has a passion for everything when you watch him on screen, and it's almost infectious. However, the problem with Ryan Reynolds is that halfway through the movie, there were just so many sex jokes, and so much vulgarity, and so many unnecessary references, that I felt like I just wanted to punch him rather than actually like him. And I understand that's the whole point of the character. He can get annoying. However, when it comes to type of archetype, you're supposed to annoy the other characters, not the audience. And that's the problem with Deadpool. Another thing that I honestly found kind of disappointing was the love between him and the girlfriend, who's, if you don't know, a prostitute. Now, I honestly have no problem with the fact that she's a prostitute. My main problem with her is the fact that she's very one-dimensional, and besides her spelling out references and being random, they basically have no chemistry. And that honestly makes me really disappointed, because the minute I saw her, I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to be a panty-anarchy type character. She's going to be really badass and edgy. And that's pretty much how she was played up for a while. How she's also going to be very sexy and sell herself out and very funny. And that's what I expected, because if you haven't seen Panty and Stocking, that's pretty much what Panty is. And heck, she's so, vulgar in herself. I actually made like this bad shipping art of her and Deadpool. That's how much I actually imagined that working. So, because of that, I was actually kind of excited to see her, but when she actually showed up, there just was no chemistry with them. I mean, the first, I think 5 or 6 minutes, 6 minutes with them together, it's like, you can tell that they're setting up something. It's like, oh, this is where the love plays out. However, the problem is that instead of being treated to actual chemistry, we get a bunch of sex scenes that drag on for so long that I feel like I'm watching 50 Shades of Grey, and so many sex jokes that you don't get any of that connection that you wanted, which is really, really disappointing. And I honestly think that the best moments with them is when Deadpool gets cancer. And I know that's a really terrible thing to say, but it's true, because that is the only moment throughout the entire movie where I give a flying crap about her. She actually seems very concerned, she actually seems like she cares, and she almost seems like she's denying the fact that he'll die of cancer because she loves him so much, and that's very admirable, and I like that about her. But other than that, it's just, I honestly feel like that she could have been written out with any other female lead character with any other type of personality, and the movie wouldn't have changed at all. And especially even more annoying during the end. Spoiler, just skip to 12 or 13 minutes. But during the end of the movie, she's actually pretty much captured by the bad guy. And of course she's saved, and then they kiss. And it's all just really predictable. And that's going to my biggest parody. Not parody. That's going to my biggest problem with the movie. The fact that it's not a parody. Now, the main enjoyment behind Deadpool is that besides his hilarious fourth wall breaking quips, I'm on a racket today, but besides his hilarious fourth wall breaking quips, the funniest thing about him is the fact that he parodies other Marvel characters, and he also has a deep hatred of Wolverine, which can get really hilarious, but none of that is really here. A lot of it is just a bunch of dumbed down sex jokes. And I'll even be honest, I actually counted the moments where Deadpool broke the fourth wall, and I think it was only like 6 times, pretty much. And that kind of follows with the problem with the movie, because I feel like that with a lot of the reviewers and a lot of the marketing, because the marketing pretty much showed the good parts of the movie, and that is the first 10 minutes, because the first 10 minutes are glorious. The credits are hilarious. The way Deadpool gets into action is hilarious. The way Deadpool kicks people is badass. And that's a cool thing about the movie. And that's another problem with the false marketing. It pretty much markets itself as a fun, self-referential parody movie, which you would expect to parody lots of superhero movies, because, that's the genre it is, and that's the type of thing that Deadpool would do. Parody other superhero movies. But apparently that wasn't important. Like, the only time that I can think of and where it legitimately parodied other movies were cheap shots at X-Men Origin Wolverines, which sadly wasn't as funny as I thought it was. Like, they made one reference to Green Lantern, which they've already shown in the trailer, and the bad action figure of the ugly version of Deadpool from the movie. Those are the only references, besides, cheap shots at Spider-Man and I think one other superhero. Those are the only references they ever make. And when Deadpool's main foundation is based on making fun of other comic book characters and kind of laughing at their flaws, that is really bad. And another thing, the problem is the villain. Like, I think the worst thing about the villain is the fact that he is just so generic. And it's kind of funny because, the credits actually kind of, make fun of him like, British villain or whatever, I don't remember. But that's pretty much all he is, a stereotypical British villain with this evil little cat that's a complete asshole and does nothing throughout the entire movie. Now, one thing that I will give the movie on is that, did I hate him? Yes, I did. But the problem is that I felt less like I hated him because, oh, look at all the things he's doing as a hero, rather than him as an actual character. Because it's kind of funny because I actually read this, as tips for writers. And one of the things that they tell you not to do is to highlight how horrible your villain based on their crimes alone. And that's all the movie did. They just gave him a stereotypical evil grand voice and just have him do horrible things to Deadpool. And it just felt really unnecessary, to be honest. And I felt like the torture was just too much. And like the sex scenes, it was dragged out for way too long. We get it, the guy's an asshole. We get it, Deadpool's in pain. We get it. You do not have to show 10 or 5 minutes of this. But besides that, I would say the absolute worst thing about this movie would be the origin story segments. And I think that's really disappointing because, for one, I was actually interested in his origin story because I didn't really read the comics. And two, the origin story makes up 90% of the movie. Alright. Well, where do I go on with this? The origin story pretty much has all the same flaws the actual movie does. Overuse of sex jokes, overuse of references, which are pretty basic and disappointing, and overuse of just humor in general. Now, from this review, you may think that I'm just some sassy, no good teenager that's really serious and moody like the one portrayed in the movie that can't laugh. Well, I'd like to tell you one thing. One of my favorite animes is Panty and Stocking, and if you actually watch that show, it'll probably be too, I don't know what's the word, edgy or vulgar for most people to enjoy. But the thing that I like about that anime is that it's actually clever with its vulgarity, and its prime focus is parodying other animes and on its overall story and characters, and it is just shoving sex jokes everywhere, although it does shove lots of sex jokes and is, by the way funnier than Deadpool ever is. Like, literally, if you just watch 5 minutes of just Panty and Stocking arguing over their boyfriends, it's way funnier than most of the movie combined. And that goes to my biggest problem with the movie. Well, my second and third biggest problem is that the jokes themselves are not unfunny because it's vulgar. They're unfunny because they're painfully vulgar. It's like when a little kid or even a cartoon character finds out about swearing and finds out that they can cuss now, and then they go crazy with the craziest, vulgar, most shit possible without actually having a reason for it or without actually knowing what the heck they're saying. That's basically this movie. And in conclusion, I guess one more thing I can say before I end this review off is the fact that the effects are actually very, very good. Colossus looked almost real in the sense the CGI and Deadpool's eyes were good, and the effects, they were spot on. They were really good. And I would say, would I recommend Deadpool? Well, I don't know. If you're a fan of the character and already know all the comic books and everything, and if you do like the very, very vulgar and violent and screwed up parts of it, then yeah, I can imagine you enjoying it. And if you've seen the movie and you do enjoy it and you do not agree with any of the points, in my review, then good for you, because you got way more out of it than I ever could, so there's that. However, if you're like me and where you respect the character and you think he's hilarious and you like him more for the psychological aspect of it and the more clever aspects of his humor than a bunch of sex jokes and a bunch of nudity and a bunch of things that you'd expect a 13-year-old to make, then you will not enjoy this movie at all. And if you do watch this movie, then please don't listen to the hype. The hype will only lower your expectations, because I listened to the hype, and I will say that this movie got a lower rating for me than it probably ever would if I didn't listen to the hype. Overall, that was my review, and I would give Deadpool a 6, 7 out of 10, and that's all I have to say for now. Goodbye!